On Wednesday, July 7th, the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, was killed in a raid on his residence by a group of heavily armed men. The attackers called out to the security forces defending the presidential residence in English that they were an American Drug Enforcement Agency task force engaged in an anti-narcotics operation. Once access to the building was achieved, the men apparently disarmed the presidential guards, tied up some members of staff, and then proceeded to murder Moise. The president was reportedly shot 12 times. His wife was also shot multiple times, and at the time of this video being produced, is in hospital in Miami, where she is currently in a stable but critical condition. The attack sent shockwaves across the Americas, which have grown as details have emerged. This report will attempt to explain this episode with the most current information available, though the sheer confusion of the situation means that new information is constantly coming to light. Following the assassination, the group that are accused of responsibility was traced to buildings in the capital, Port-au-Prince, and engaged in a day-long gun battle with Haitian security forces. At one stage, a group of 11 of the suspects actually broke into the grounds of the Taiwanese embassy. If they hoped this would offer them some protection, they proved mistaken when the Taiwanese waived diplomatic restrictions for the Haitian police, who were then able to capture the gunmen. In total, the accused group of assassins are composed of 26 Colombian nationals and 2 Americans of Haitian origin. Of this group, 3 of the Colombians were killed in the gunfight and another 18 plus the Americans were arrested. The Haitian police state that they believe that there are another 5 members of the group still unaccounted for and have called on the public to assist in locating them. They have also stated that the men at large are extremely dangerous, which would make sense considering the identities of the men killed or captured. So far, 17 of the Colombians have been identified as former members of the Colombian army. These men all retired from service in the last 5 years and include personnel with decades of experience and many with special forces training. This was confirmed by the commander of the Colombian military, who has said that they are fully cooperating with the Haitians to determine just what happened. According to the Colombian magazine Semana, the group were mercenaries that were hired by retired Colonel Carlos Giovanni Guerrero Torres, who was one of the men captured in Haiti. Torres is a former battalion commander, and from WhatsApp messages that Semana alleges are from him that they have acquired, appears to have been the primary military organizer of the attack. According to the Colombian authorities, 4 security companies were used to recruit the men for the attack, and they are further investigating the links between these and what occurred. Families of some of the captured mercenaries have spoken to the press, stating that these men were recruited for security jobs in Haiti. This is far from unusual, as Colombian veterans are extremely popular recruits for security companies and PMCs all over the world. This is due to their generally good training and extensive combat experiences in high-threat areas that many of Colombia's long-serving soldiers have from fighting the cartels and guerrillas. Torres' WhatsApp group messages concerning the recruitment of these personnel hold interesting details. The WhatsApp group is made up of at least 100 people, indicating that Torres planned to recruit a larger company. In it, he says that the men are committing to a 5-year contract to be paid $2,700 per month, and that this will be a large project that may require many more people in the future. In short, if the messages are correct and to be believed, Torres expected his Colombian mercenaries to form a Praetorian Guard for a new president once Moise was dead or removed, and that additional personnel would be required to secure the country. Fantastic as it seems, this is actually quite an old scheme that has cropped up surprisingly often post-Second World War. In fact, the plot for the famous thriller The Dogs of War by Frederick Forsyth is essentially about one of these mercenary coups. Generally, these attempts end in the same manner as this situation, but I shall be covering a few of these soon, which I hope you folks will find interesting. But as to Haiti, the news of the Colombian involvement has caused uproar. Who else could be involved? Well, the Haitians claimed they have made steps to solving that. The 2 Haitian Americans also caught have been identified as James J. Solages, a resident of Fort Lauderdale, and Joseph Vincent, a 55-year-old man from Miami who was a naturalized citizen from Haiti. Both men claimed that they had been recruited to work as translators for the Colombians and that the action was, as far as they were aware, intended to arrest President Moise and not kill him. Details on Vincent are vague, though he appears to have had some brushes with the law while in the United States. Solages had undergone tactical courses and worked as a security guard for the Canadian Embassy in Haiti in the past, and appears to have been involved in charity projects in the country. Interestingly, and no doubt this will throw further fuel on the fire, the DEA has admitted that one of these has worked for them as an informer in the past, though hasn't identified which one. The capture of the mercenaries was followed by Haitian police arresting on July the 11th the man who they state was the intended beneficiary of the attack, Christian Emmanuel Sanon. Another Florida resident, Sanon has for several decades been calling for political and economic reform in Haiti, principally through new leadership. In a 2011 YouTube video by Sanon, it seems very clear that he intended for that new leadership to be him. But his political presence in Haiti was non-existent before his arrest, leading to speculation that he was simply the frontman or possibly just a dupe for other conspirators. The Haitians allege that Sanon flew into Haiti on a private jet in early June. 4 of the men accused of being part of the hit team were apparently there as his bodyguard detail, and this was the first stage prior to the recruitment of additional mercenaries and ultimately the attack. Whether this was always the intended outcome is unclear, though the police also state that there are 2 other men they are pursuing who they haven't publicly identified. These they believe are the principal masterminds of the plot. But there are still many questions about the whole affair. The authorities have stated that they wish to question the commander of the Presidential Guard detail and the head of security for the President's house. They also say they will be questioning several politicians and important Haitian business leaders concerning the killing. Though the details are still being revealed, the consequences are already starting to reverberate. Moissi was far from popular as president. Indeed, he faced regular protests both on the streets and serious opposition in the country's political and business bodies. But his brutal murder, especially with heavy involvement of foreign nationals, has caused outrage. The poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti has long struggled with chronic unemployment, almost non-existent opportunities for its young population, and epidemic gang violence. With Moise's death, the politicians have immediately begun jockeying for power, with 2 both claiming to be the legitimate Prime Minister and therefore claiming control. Additionally, at least 2 members of the Senate, which technically has no legal authority as its members have lapsed election schedules, have been nominated by different factions as interim president. To make things even more erratic, one of these candidates has called on the United States to deploy troops to the country to stabilise it. That seems unlikely in my opinion, though I cannot discount it. Because despite the widespread perception that the United States tends to deploy troops quicker than you could say, wait, is this oil? There really is little reason for them to do so in Haiti unless the place explodes and threatens the stability of the wider region. Which, may happen. Should the US decide to deploy troops, they will certainly feed into the theory that this is some sort of imperialist plot. And already others are making noises about this. One of the most powerful gang leaders in the country, Jimmy Chevizier, has come out stating that the murder was a, quote, national and international conspiracy, end quote, instigated by, quote, many people from the opposition and the stinking bourgeoisie, end quote. He has further called on the gangs to come out onto the streets and practice, quote, legitimate violence, end quote, to break the power of those who control Haiti. With gang leaders like Chevizier wielding considerable power due to their large and well-armed gangs, and the political establishment seeming to be purely interested in their squabbles, the future for Haiti, a country that has suffered more than its fair share of disaster in the past, really doesn't look good at all.